Well, okay. So who are we? Who are you?
I am Abi Levis. I am a mezzo-soprano.
In quotation marks.
Yes, and I think at some point we'll have a whole conversation on the Fox system and our feelings on that.
Oh,
But,
love
but that's
that.
not what we're talking about today. Who are you?
Okay, I am Devin Guthrie, and I am a soprano. And we were supposed to sing in Fledermaus this season.
Sure were. We were supposed to. I was going to
Yeah.
be Sorlovsky with Fort Worth Opera. I've never worked with them before. I was a McCammon winner.
Yeah. I also had never worked at Fort Worth before, and but Joe and I had the absolute pleasure of doing a concert in November that was sort of in anticipation of our production. And that was super fun. And that was my introduction.
On a wire.
Yeah, that was in the before times. In the before times. Anyway, so tell the story of how we met, because it is
I was
awesome.
more or less trying to escape a giant house party, an all-day house party that was happening at my house. And I just needed like a couple hours away from that. And so I went to my local yarn store, which is Make One
in Laverne, California.
Not Claremont. It's just over the bar into Laverne. And I was just sitting there like knitting away. And I hear out of the corner of my ear, and I looked like trash that day, like glasses. Like
lies. You did not look like trash. You looked glorious as always.
Oh, thank you. I hear out of the corner of my little ear, like, well, in my other job, I do this, and I'm an opera singer. And I was like, excuse me? Who are you?
People.
And everyone had told me, like, oh my God, you're going to work with Devin. You guys are both knitters. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be this like coming together. And then there you were, and you were like the teacher that day. Like you were like holding a seminar.
Yeah, I was teaching a workshop, a weaving workshop that day. Of course, like normal people do.
Yeah, and all the other women in this knitting store were like, can someone remind me how to do Kitchener though? Sorry,
I know. Right?
And just
like, wait, but how do you do like a cable cast on again? And I'm like, oh yeah, obviously, but just like 1 second, this is like a really cool small world coincidence. I had no idea you lived in Claremont.
And I didn't know you were from there.
Yeah, born and raised. It's just such a small world. And I have to tell you, the specific incidents of unexpectedly bumping into a future fellow castmate in a yarn store, this is not the first time that's happened to me.
There's a lot of us that people are like, oh,
there's so many. It's great.
That's such a weird combo. I'm like, it's really not.
Not. It's not. Because knitting, it is so portable. It is so, wherever, I'm sure I can speak for both of us when I say wherever we go for work, you find the yarn store.
It's usually
the yarn store. Oh yeah. The souvenir is like, what's some yarn that's local to you, or who's a local dyer, or whatever. And it's also, all right, how can I feel integrated into the world outside just my job, which, it's so universal. Any job we go to, we immediately become temporary family or temporary social group of some kind, which helps ground us all, but also feeling integrated into the world, not just in our little microcosm of our show. I find the local yarn store, and if it's a yarn store worth its salt, which most of them are, you go in, there's a big table.
Yep.
And then there's a bunch of people saying, oh yeah, come on, sit down, what are you working on, where are you from, and then you immediately, it's like, yes, we speak a common language. We may not know each other at all. We may have very differing, beliefs or worldviews, but we have this thing in common. And yes, immediately I feel like, okay, cool.
But none of us remember how to do the Kitchener stitch.
Oh God, every single time I have to remind myself. Yeah. So anyway, so what pattern are we knitting? Because everyone wants to know.
We are knitting a soldatna crap. I'm in Minnesota right now, so I'm going to
you're in Minnesota.
Yes, Minnesotan accents. I'm not from there. I married into it. We are doing a soldatna crop, which is a neck down yoke sweater.
Yeah.
A yoke.
I love the color palette you chose. It's both springy and autumnal at the same time.
Right? She's multi-seasonal, and it is.
Oh my God.
I had a couple of journeys with this color placement.
Yeah, and I love how you widened your neckline.
Thank you. I hope it lays right. We'll find out once we block her.
You know, again, it'll block out. It'll block out.
Block out.
Yeah. So this is actually my second one of these because it is first. The first one I did was it was sort of like a deserty rose palette. Lots of like neutrals, say like peaches and pale colors. Very warm toned. Yeah, like very warm tones. And I decided to go for some cool tones this time. And this pink is from one of our local dyers in Claremont, actually, and the purple, actually.
We have local dyers in Claremont.
Yeah. Yes, they are. Oh my God, are you gonna? Is this your NPR?
This is where I've decided to become an NPR host. Everyone, thank you.
Yes. Oh yeah, you have to use the NPR voice.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming to Stitchy and Pitchy. And I got to do the like clicky thing that Ira Glass he always like smacks his tongue a little bit. It drives me bonkers. I love it.
I know. I have one of those microphones. I didn't think to use it. I'm using my high-tech headphones.
This is not an ad for Blue Yeti, but if they want to become sponsors,
I do have a Blue Yeti as well. Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah. It's sort of like when like pilots immediately have to talk when they're on the comm, like welcome to flight number. Like there's the pilot voice, so like the NPR voice. This is all totally relevant to an opera conversation, I promise. So, oh my gosh.
The business.
I know.
And here ends the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for coming. No, but seriously, like we're sort of in this, like big transitional moment, and there is that sort of feeling of like, okay, and what now?
Yeah. It's wild, man. I mean, and I know I've had this issue of like, I'm conservatory trained. So for those watching who don't really know what that means, when I went to my undergraduate, specifically, I was not trained in anything other than singing and singing related things.
Yeah.
So, like, I was talking to a friend today too, like, I didn't take a writing course. I didn't take like basic, like math courses that everyone's required to take.
The last time I took math was junior year of high school. Because I also went to a conservatory. I did not go to a university. Yeah. So there was that also means like there's no general ed required. And I mean, there's history, but it's music history. Right. And for us, our math is music theory in essence. For me, that kind of has similar weight. You know what I mean?
Looking back on it, I'm so thankful for my education. I super wish I'd been a double major. In anything, because like when all this blew up, I was like, well, I'll go wait tables, and then I was like, oh, wait a minute, none of the restaurants are open.
Can't do it because for a lot of us, that's the only other experience. Now, I actually have not had had the experience of being working, in the food industry in service, but I have other my other experiences have been equally limited because we're taught to put, as we should, all of our energy into our craft and to our career. But well, see, this is kind of the interesting thing, right? We get to sort of learn from this and transform and adapt. But I was under the impression as a student, especially also in conservatory, and then specifically the New York conservatory environment, you don't diversify. You put all your eggs in this basket because you want this career, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with putting all of your effort into your dream and into your path. The one thing that I wish had been expanded on, and that I find myself sort of filling in educational gaps right now, in my 30s, is the business side of the business, marketing, finances, because I've learned a lot through my own personal experience and plenty of mistakes. But you know, a lot of the mantra, one big mantra that I was that I heard all the time was, treat your career like you're the CEO of your own company. And you have your board of directors, and those are the people whose opinions you go to, you know, like your teacher, your therapist, your parent, your spiritual guide, whatever that is, but then ultimately make decisions. However, they didn't really give a lot of the how, you know what I mean?
No,
The principle was there. Yeah, the principle was there, but the actual, okay, now here's how you actually do it, and here's how you advertise, and here's how you plan for your financial future, and this is how taxes work, and this is how international taxes work.
In my undergrad, like, you could go and do like a sort of like artsy business elective, and if you did that, you were kind of thought of as like secretly as like a nerdy kid who, like, it wasn't.
We were all nerds anyway.
I know. I was like, it wasn't super like encouraged to do that. It wasn't even encouraged to like get, you know, a double major in a foreign language and become fluent, which that alone would make you like, A, probably a better opera singer, and two, like much more like useful on the like non-music, as we'll call it, the muggle market.
The muggle market.
The muggles.
Well, but it's interesting because I will have to say, though, in fairness to the version of the schools that I went to that existed while I was a student there, Facebook just barely started during my sophomore year of college.
Remember when you needed an EDU?
Oh my God, yeah, you could only join if you were part of a college. Instagram did not, it was a twinkle in someone's eye. It didn't exist. So
I didn't get a smartphone until I was working on one of my masters.
Right. And the version of the social media landscape that we all depend on as we're our own marketing people, in essence, didn't even exist when I was training. And it came into being and grew into social relevance so fast. It was like whiplash. My teachers wouldn't even have had time to like, you know, so I was trained for in terms of marketing and that.
In terms of the reality of the current landscape, there's no way they could have known that, like,
no.
Train us for social media in a time when social media doesn't exist. So like, I don't harbor much resentment about that.
None at all. But
like, I do take umbrage with now. what I wish I'd known then. Is like the idea that, like, if you can imagine yourself, and I'm sure you were told this at one point, if you can imagine yourself doing anything other than opera, then you should quit the business right now because you don't have what it takes. And that is trash. Right. It takes a ton of focus to become very good at what we do and to sort of make it work. But there's so many aspects of what we do that I think you can capitalize on. And also this idea that, like, having a psych degree wouldn't inform your operatic performance. Having, like a social work licensing wouldn't inform your performance. Having a teaching degree wouldn't inform your ability to perform. Is a bit like it just doesn't quite make sense to me. If we're commenting on life, we should live life that's outside of like those 5 arias we work on ad nauseum.
Well, you know, that's something to be like, I love that you specifically chose, you know, our audition 5 are usually sort of like
that's all you work
in
on.
A way, they act on as your fingerprint, as your identity in a way that I think no longer needs to be. But like, no, pursuing things outside of the opera industry is no longer a threat to my integrity or identity as an opera singer.
Oh, I want to say,
you know what I mean? Can we say that? Like, it just isn't. It is not a threat to my integrity or identity as an opera singer, because
or my ability.
Oh no, heavens no. If anything,
good.
Yes.
Speaking of like having no applicable skills, because all we did was study voice.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing.
Identity crisis when it happened was I was like, well, if I'm not a singer right now, what am I doing? Because I have my hobbies and I'm a wife and I'm a stepmom and I have all these other like identities, but my primary identity, because it's, you know, of how I was raised in the system of like, if you're not doing only opera, or you're not an opera singer first, then you're not an opera singer at all.
Right.
And so if I wasn't opera singing, like who am I?
And then the string section comes in and she goes into the rock ballad in Act 2. Yeah. No, but it's true. It's like, who am I? What am I doing?
Yeah. And my practicing led me to like singing other things. And because when I would go to sit down, like my first instinct was like, well, I have to practice the things I have coming up. And it was like, you know, record rip, like, no, there's nothing coming up. And then my next thing was like, well, I guess I can work on my 5 or my aria package, which for me isn't 5. It's like a rotation of 15. And I was like, why? I'm not going to be doing auditions anytime soon. Yeah. And I have no passion for these arias like really anymore because they're a little beat to death. So like rediscovering like why I sing has been a big part of like coming back to the art of singing after having my identity sort of torn from me.
Well, I don't mean to laugh, but the delivery is just okay. So that's a really interesting point, right? So have you arrived at sort of like the answer to that question for yourself yet? Like,
I have arrived at like I'm in a position of great privilege where I don't necessarily, just because of where I am in my career, where I am financially, I don't necessarily have to take roles anymore that are like, I'm just doing this for my resume.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just doing this because I have nothing better to do. Like I can more or less decide like, I want to take something that interests me. Or I want my artwork to make a statement. So if I never sing Mercedes again, I'm going to be fine.
Got it. I mean, that's a great bread and butter role.
Right.
But I
don't mean that to say that like I'm only taking leading roles from here on out, but like, because that's A, not the case with my Fach, and B, just not really my jam. I like playing some supporting roles. But like Mercedes in it, you know?
Yeah.
Prince Orlovsky, I love. Carabino, I love. Flora, even I love. But like, this is a note to any casting directors right now. Those are the roles I know. Don't come at me with your Mercedes unless you pay me.
So have you found that your artistic or career priorities have shifted at all?
Yeah, I mean, I really want to diversify a little bit right now. So I'm kind of like sitting with this concept of what else do I want to do? There's a lot of stigma, I think, around like, well, if you're not earning all your income from singing, then you're a failure.
Again, part of the same sort of, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which in order to earn like a living as a singer, it's very hard. It's a big time commitment. And even if you are putting 100% of your time into that on the road 9 months a year, like the reality of cracking like $60,000, $70,000 a year in income is.
Yeah, well, the thing is, and that's if you're lucky enough to have that full of a schedule.
Right.
Like
right. And there's no consistency to that. Like it's some years.
And it could be one year to another. But of course, let's just say in some magical world, like you're one of the singers lucky enough to have that dense of a schedule. What is that? Where's the family life work?
Right.
And of course, everyone has their own answer to that question. And again, it's sort of interesting talking about these things because that's a version of our world that doesn't exist in this moment.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's funny. It's sort of talking about the before times. It's interesting reflecting on it and not being in that version of the world right now, you know, and
I remember back in 2019 when
I know.
I I used to travel all over.
Oh, I lived out of my suitcase. But well, for me, I haven't had my own home in over 6 years. My stuff is still in storage in Harlem, and I moved to New York for college, and it just no longer became feasible for me to pay rent when I wasn't. Well, I couldn't pay rent when I wasn't there, and the reason why I gave up my apartment is my landlady said I couldn't sublet anymore, and so I was like, okay, peace. And so since then, I'm in New York. Well, have been in the before times in New York a lot of the time, but I would sublet because we always have a colleague who's out of town, and then I could sublet from one of our colleagues who's out of town. But I've been working and teaching at a yarn store anytime I'm in between contracts, and that's helped me pay the bills. I teach now. I've been teaching for a few years, but even that, I didn't think I could do that remotely.
Right.
And so that was only periodic. Yeah. And now all of my students are remote, obviously. So I don't know quite what my point is.
You don't need one. You don't need one.
It's just sort of like, I have so many feelings right now, but the thing is, I guess what my point maybe is that I've been enjoying a really wonderful career, and I've had side jobs throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. And a lot of those side jobs are one to make the other career, the opera career, more feasible. But I think more and more we're realizing that like having side jobs is almost like healthier for you to have, because it gets you out of this like blinders on opera thing. And so it's like, as I look at what I want to do in my diversification, I'm like, do I want to do something that's going to like boost my opera cred, or do I want to just like do something I give a shit about?
Yeah. Or something. Okay. And then there's the argument of, okay, what's sustainable, what's practical, what is artistically fulfilling, what is financially more stable. Like there's this huge conversation to be had about all of that. Yeah,
I'm thinking about getting a trade. Honestly, I would love to weld. I think I would love that. I get to play with fire all day.
I mean, hello, we already do seaming,
right?
Welding is basically like
electrician too, because I like that's something I can do all the time.
It's literally always needed.
And that's one of the things that I'm thinking about as far as like diversification. Like
I'm taking an online business and marketing class, but I'm basically cherry picking out of that whole spectrum of knowledge and sort of supplementing in the gaps of my knowledge, and that is more of the theory of marketing. I've learned, again, sort of like scrappy education through my own experience. Do you know what I mean?
Googling the best days to Instagram post.
I know, seriously, and it seems so intuitive to so many people, but to me, I just want a lot more of, I guess, for lack of a better word, like technique, like actual understanding of the theory of marketing. Right. So I am taking that right now. I'm taking it online through one of our local colleges, local to us in the Southern California region. And because I recognize that is something that I personally, I just need to be better at, and I want an understanding of that a better understanding of that regardless, it's out. But the point is there's some universal things about marketing and sales and stuff that I there's not a ton of
every day we sell ourselves.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, and there's also not always a ton of transparency and things, and I just would like to understand a little bit more of the cogs, like the moving parts of the marketing machine, and as my grandmother used to say, who knows, I just might learn something. So
do you remember when we both applied to work at grocery stores and were denied?
Yeah. And we both applied to the same locations because we're in there. I could not get an interview at Trader Joe's.
Didn't even get an interview.
Get an interview. I got remember back when we were like applying to Yaps and you would get the PFOs?
Yes. For those who don't know, a PFO.
Great. That's great. Anyway, but a PFO.
PFO stands for please off. Which
it's a colloquialism used among young artists when you get a
obviously form letter that they're like, dear blankety blank, this year was an incredibly tough year for us to make decisions, and so many people applied, and you have so much talent, but not enough to work for us. Thank you.
And it's specifically for young artist programs, like
Right.
those summer young artist programs. Some of them are paid to sing, some of them are not. And it's just the generic letter that they send to the singers that they don't accept into the program. And so that's what was that?
I want one set to music.
That's a really good idea. Oh my God. A song cycle.
A song cycle of all my favorite PFOs.
Yes, or you would also be good, a song cycle of all of our worst critics, like write-ups. Wouldn't that be great?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, basically, we both applied to Sprouts, to Trader Joe's and all that, and got a bunch of, PFOs. Didn't even get an interview.
I got an interview at Sprouts though, and let me tell you this story, girl. This was
What?
I showed up at Sprouts. They were looking for somebody for their fish counter, and I, being a born and raised Mainer, I live like moments from the sea. My brother-in-law's a lobsterman, was like, I'm perfect.
Yes.
They've never seen perfection like this at the fish counter. She knows her seafood and she's ready to sell it. And I went there, and because I haven't, first when I had to make my Muggle resume, I was like, my last real job, or like.
By the way, first time I ever made a Muggle resume was a month ago, 2 months ago. I had to look it up, had to look up how to do it. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I had to ask friends. I'm like, can someone send me a template? I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so I wrote it down, and I realized like all of my main jobs were food service, like waiting tables related, and they were a decade ago. I haven't done that since. I haven't done it. And none of those jobs required resumes. You just filled out a job application and walked
right.
So
and congratulations that it's been that long since you've had to do that job, by the way. Congratulations. Like, that's awesome.
Who cares? Whatever. If you have to do a job like that, fine.
No, I know, but like, that's kind of awesome. Like, if that's where your life was, like, great.
It's also a significant portion of my like privilege.
That's a big thing. That's an important conversation.
Yeah, Daddy's supportive, and that's really helpful in this business because she's expansive. And so I haven't done this in 10 years, and they grant me an audition, and I'm going to call it that because in my brain that's what job interview was.
Sprouts grants you an audition. Great. Did you prepared your 5, brought your headshot? Amazing.
Yeah. My outfit was curated. I was like, well, I don't want to dress the way I do at auditions because that's too much, right? Like, I don't want to wear like a cocktail dress. And I don't even wear cocktail dresses anymore. I wear like a cute skirt and like sneakers still. Like, I wear like my fashion sneaks now. But so I was like, okay, well, I gotta like chill out though. Like, it's a grocery store.
Please tell me you went there in like fly fishing overalls.
I went in like a full cotton skirt, like 50s style little skirt, and like ballet flats because I wanted to dress it down. And like a nice tank top, you know, and like a jean jacket. Because again, I'm dressing it down, but not like.
There you go. Oh my gosh.
The poor manager at this place was like, you look really nice. Usually people just come in like shorts and a t-shirt. And like the minute I sat down, I'm like, oh, I just bombed this. I dressed like I was auditioning for a church job. I'm not counter at Sprouts. I 30 minutes after getting home got the PFO.
Yeah.
You're like, thank you.
Well, you got further than I did. I didn't even get an interview. So good job.
Not hireable. But we have a lot of skills as singers that are applicable, but we don't know how to market those. And that's something that would have been, I think, more helpful in our like training. Is like, hey, it's much more realistic to assume that you will need these skills than to assume that you won't need them.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I'm taking some marketing, training right now, because it's just a necessary part of it. And it takes a lot of go-getting, you know, and I feel like I had the impression I was supposed to sort of wait for my career to happen to me, not being proactive. Obviously being proactive and networking and keeping up my you know,
but
my
that way
professional.
Proactive in the sense that you're ready when it happens.
Yeah. And not as much curating
Taking.
my own. Yeah, and like I don't know. And maybe I'm naive, like maybe I just miss altogether, but I'm more so talking about with actual opera companies, you know, like how does that dialogue happen? And it's just interesting. I don't know. I'm learning a lot with this marketing class because it's not opera marketing. You know what I mean? It's not,
it's not how to
marketing,
market
like
yourself to the 3 people behind the table with casting places or casting.
Because a case in point, a resume. I know if someone came to me saying, "Hey, here's my theatrical resume or my opera resume. How does it look?" I would know the professional expectation.
Mm-hmm.
I had to look up how to put together a normal resume because I've had plenty of side jobs, but they're all things that I was sort of able to get, like the yarn store I work at in New York City. I was able to get that not because I applied, but because I was a customer there for many years, and it just sort of organically happened. You know what I mean? So I didn't know how to put together this kind of resume and things like that I feel so silly for not knowing. And again, very privileged to not have to know. But
we get our jobs so much through networking that when we aren't in opera, we kind of keep just using our network. So it's like, well, I could just call my cousin and maybe he could get me a job at his company or something. Or like, I can just, you know, call my friend who has a yarn thing and like show
exactly. Yeah. So what are you drinking tonight?
Tonight is brought to you by the Pinot Project, which is
we are not sponsored, but we
are not sponsored,
want
but
to
we
be.
like to be. The 2018 rosé from Italy, the Pinot Project, and I discovered this wine in a donor's fridge. I was staying at their apartment in New York, and no one else was there. It was my first time staying with them. I've since learned the rules of engagement of I can eat whatever I want in their kitchen, and they won't care.
Oh, that's lovely.
And it was like a third of the bottle had been drunk, and I was like, well, I'll just have like half a glass, just like half a glass, and they won't even notice. And I tried it, and I loved it, and I naturally drank the rest of the bottle. And the next morning, I was like, what have I done? Like, terrified that they were going to be like, well, we would have loved having her if she wasn't a Steely McSteelerson. I freaked out because my anxiety just like peaked, and I go online and I'm like searching where to find this exact wine anywhere in the 5 boroughs. And I found it in like outer Brooklyn. That's cute. Look at that kid saying that's nice.
Oh, nice. Oh, love it.
Right?
Where opera singers are glamorous. We never sweat.
That's something they don't tell you. It is a sweaty.
It's a sweaty business.
And I play men, so I am constantly in like more clothing.
18 layers.
And it's all wool. It's all wool.
Yeah.
Or
and we're knitters. We love wool. But 18 layers of wool, and I'm assuming you have to wear a breast binder for half of your rolls.
Sometimes. I usually just wear a sports bra because they're not.
There you go. Oh,
She's
nice.
down already.
But yeah, under 18, layers of wool and like all the stage lights and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Just the stress.
Oh yeah, and all of that, and the wig and the stuff.
I ran out and I found this bottle of wine, and I loved it so much I actually featured it at my wedding.
Oh, lovely. Oh, I hate Pinot Project. Well, I'm enjoying a little Sancerre because delicious.
Nice
one of my favorite aspects of our job when we get to do it is the travel. I mean, I love it so much. And I haven't even had my own home because it just made more sense to live out of my suitcase for the last 6.5 years. And I miss travel so much because like I spent so many years in school. I got 3 degrees and it was a wonderful education, but nothing has been an education to me like travel. Travel to me is the greatest teacher, and I love it so much. So, I mean, we all, I'm sure. I mean, you don't go into our version of our job, like being the freelancer who goes all around, if you don't like travel. If you don't like travel, it's not gonna be for you, you know? No, it's just not. It's just a big part of our job. And so I find myself traveling in my kitchen. So I invested in a really nice bottle of Italian extra virgin olive oil. But I bought this Italian olive oil, and it says on the bottle that some of the olives were like sourced from Siena, and I once was in, like, my feet were in Siena. I mean, the rest of my body was also in Siena. But you know, like I miss travel so desperately, and Italy has hurt. I mean, so many places have been hurting so badly, but you know, it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna eat really, really, you know, and good Italian food as much as I can muster with my own cooking skills. And yeah, and I got like nice sesame oil to put on beautiful like Japanese cooking, and as best as I can, you know, and because I miss these places, so I'm trying to like go there with
food,
my cooking.
I love it. My BOR fell off, and I knit.
Oh no!
Oh, that I didn't need to rest.
Well, if you're doing the color work, then you can just see where the strand is,
right?
And that's
right, exactly.
Oh yeah, so let's see. We're both under the underarm. So
yeah, I am I'm almost through 2 body repeats.
Okay, I'm through. Let's see here.
Many more.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a half. But I am elongating mine just a smidge.
I don't know who. Okay, this is my one complaint with this pattern. Who's only doing 5 body repeats on this?
That people who are short waist.
That would hit like maybe just below my boob, like maybe.
Well, are you very long waisted?
I'm just
like long in the torso.
And long in the everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So that, you know, maybe the designer shirt. It's funny. I'm actually very short waisted, but I'm not a short person, and
right.
So I sometimes have to fudge it. So one of the samples I tried on was as written. It was come scritto.
It was not con la voce.
It was come scritto. And
nerds.
And, I know, right? And I tried it on, and I actually did not mind how short it was, especially if however you layer it. But I did ultimately decide, like a crop top, but like it's a woolen crop top. So what season are you wearing that for?
What are we doing here?
Yes. What time of the year are we wearing this? And so I actually did elongate my first one a little bit. I'm going to do the same with this one, but my Lanta.
Do you think this pattern would work in a cotton?
No. Well, okay, hold on.
I've never knit
that statement.
Full disclosure.
Never knit with cotton. Okay, so it has no natural elasticity, right? It's a cellulose fiber. So cotton, linen, bamboo, any of those cellulosic fibers have no natural elasticity. And if they stretch out, that's it, basta così, right?
When you say cellulose, do you mean like from a plant?
Yeah. Like you and I are right now knitting with protein fibers because they all come from an animal.
From an aminal.
Yes. And I'm also going to drink this cellulose drink.
Thanks, plants.
Thanks, plants. See, it's basically a salad.
Yeah, I'm getting my from veggies.
I know, right? So, but the kind of color work we're doing is ideally you use non-superwash wool, so it or alpaca or other protein fibers that grab at each other, right? So that, well, I mean, not necessarily ideally, but the cultures that these color work traditions come from are from really cold regions, like the Nordic countries, North Scotland, like the Shetland Islands, Scandinavian countries, where you have sheep and goats that produce fiber that is what we think of as itchy and scratchy, but is also very sticky and light and airy,
Right.
And so
Wicks
this comes
crazy.
absolutely. And the thing about this kind of color work is, again, so this is very topical for an opera conversation. When you knit with two colors together, it immediately creates a double thickness fabric. So it's already making it warmer. And it's like blah, blah, blah.
You can see
yes.
there's
Oh, look at your floats. Look at those floats. Look at my floats.
Yeah, I feel like
so I don't believe in never, and I don't believe in rules, especially when people try to apply them to textile, to any kind of art, right? So I'm not going to say no that you shouldn't use cotton for them. I'm sorry, what was that?
Don't tell me what to do.
Exactly. Oh, artistic freedom. But truly, so I won't say no, but just go in with your eyes open. Cotton. I actually have just on the other side of this computer my spinning wheel with my latest hand spun yarn. I learned to spin from a violist at the Bard Summer Festival in 2009.
I went to Bard for my second master's degree, and the fact that you learned to spin wool at Bard.
Yeah,
it
from
tracks.
a violist.
It tracks. And were they like a rope specialist?
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. So first of all, I was knitting during a break in rehearsal because obviously it was the Wagner summer. And obviously a Wagnerian singer, I am not. However, it was.
I wasn't there, is what you were saying.
Well, no, I was, because it was Wagner and his contemporaries. And so I did lots of like Strauss and Mahler's art song. We did some Liederabends. God. But I was on one performance of excerpts from Meistersinger. And so we were there with the orchestra, and I was knitting during a rehearsal, and this violist comes up to me. She's like, oh, cool, a fellow knitter, which happens frequently because we're everywhere. Giant.
Bard, of course, I didn't really get super into knitting until after I graduated from Bard, and I found out later that I was in like Rhinebeck land.
Oh, that's a whole other conversation.
Sorry, we won't even go there. We're not going to go there. We're going to table that. But basically,
that could be chapter 2, but
it's a little bit like Coachella for knitters.
Oh, it is San Diego Comic-Con for knitters.
Comic-Con.
And I actually just did on my knitting Instagram, I did this whole thing the other day, late at night. I was just like missing like our whole community, and I'm making a Rhinebeck sweater anyway, even though we can't be there this year. Because the Rhinebeck sweater is bigger than anyway, whatever. So the violist comes up to me and she's like, oh, a knitter, cool, awesome. I was like, yeah, yay. That's the other thing. It brings people together. So, and she's like, do you know how to spin? I was like, no, but you read my mind, because that's literally, I was at that point, I'd been knitting forever. And I was like, I want to know what happens before knitting. How does yarn become yarn? What is the process? What are different sheep breeds like wool, and how are they have different textile characteristics and crimp and staple length and luster and blah, blah, blah. And she's like,
differences.
Yes. And I was like really interested in it. And at the end of that summer, I had just apprenticed at Tanglewood, and I had the few weeks there, and then I was going to like get into spinning somehow. She's like, oh, I'm a spinner. I'll give you a little lesson. So she gave me a 1-hour lesson on a drop spindle, but I went in, she invited me over to her place, and she had like 3 or 4 different spinning wheels. And one of them was a huge walking wheel, which a walking wheel is different than a regular, like my spinning wheel is a double treadle castle style fold up Polish model. I mean, obviously, again, so topical for opera.
This is some Gretchen on Spain rock.
And so a walking wheel is one that's so big, and it's much more old, and you had to like walk across the room to like add the twist to the fiber, and then you would sometimes it involved like 2 people. It's huge.
Get it.
No, seriously. Point being, it was massive, and she brought them all to the dorm where she was staying there that summer. I was like, I love you for bringing 3 spinning wheels to your summer gig. I love it. So yeah, from then it was just the rest history. And I one summer when I was apprenticing at Santa Fe, I befriended a goat shepherdess at the farmer's market, and she let me shear her goat.
One day when I was walking in the streets of Santa Fe,
Santa
that's a
Fe.
country song. Like a young goat shepherdess came upon me.
Oh yeah, I was totally like she has a booth and she sells goat milk and goat milk products. And I was like, "Do you have any fiber bearing goats?" And she's like, "I have one." And I was like, "Oh, what do you do with the fiber?" And she's like, "I I'm not a tax artisan. I don't really do anything. We just shear it for the animal's own comfort because if you don't, it's not good."
Yeah.
And so I ended up being able to go and shear it. And she's like, "Yeah, just come on up. We'll have some lemonade. You can shear my goat." And like, well,
That's fabulous. I made it through 1.5 rows in this
oh,
conversation.
I mean, I think
had
I
to
made
rip
it
out a half row. So
nice. Yeah, I think you made a little bit more progress than I did. I think I did about a whole row.
well, I'll be honest, one of my rows was like a straight row. Like I didn't have to do any color work on it.
Oh yeah, that's the easy one. Yeah.
Row 6 of the body.
Anyway, well, okay. I mean,
Did we do it? I think we did it.
I don't know. I think we did it.
We did it. We talked about
Okay,
stuff.
cool.
And next time we'll
about
talk about more stuff because this is our show.
Our show and not yours.